heterosexual and homosexual couples are eligible to receive treatment and donor eggs or sperm, making Northern Cyprus an all-welcoming, gay-friendly outlier in the non-European market. I was making my inquiries in the capacity of an infertile woman who needed donor eggs to create an embryo with her husband's sperm, plus, potentially if this didn't work, the services of a surrogate. Hyper-conscious of my existing biological children, I felt like I was cheating on them by pretending they didn't exist. I had realized, however, that these agencies operating in a grey market would be unlikely to respond openly to my questions as a journalist. After various email exchanges and phone calls, Sophia, the coordinator of one of the Israeli agencies, a relatively expensive contender, started sending me egg donor files to browse over WhatsApp. Some files included photos of the donor posing with her own children, which struck me as problematic, but was probably an effective marketing tool, a tantalizing glimpse of parenthood for the viewer. Donors in most markets exist on a complex spectrum of knowability, from totally anonymous and without photos, the cheapest and only strictly legal option in some countries, including Northern Cyprus, to open ID or ID release, named and contactable, via everything in between. Access to extra information or contact with the donor is priced accordingly. I soon realized that outside of the official setting of a clinic, and certainly on the private channels of a WhatsApp exchange, non-anonymous egg donors seemed to be extremely available. When I told a local fertility lawyer that one clinic had only offered me anonymous donors, in line with the law in Northern Cyprus, he raised an eyebrow. "They said that?" he asked incredulously. At the next clinic I visited, I pushed a little harder, mentioning that in the UK, anonymous donation is illegal. The law had been changed in 2005 because the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, HFEA, decided that a child's right to know their genetic origins trumped a donor's right to anonymity. "Well," said the patient coordinator of the clinic, a middle-aged, no-nonsense Romanian woman, "you can, of course, import frozen eggs from a donor of your choosing. That is not illegal." She probably knew that there is no law in the UK to stop anyone purchasing anonymous eggs or sperm abroad, and a baby born of such a donation is a fait accompli. In Ireland, however, recent changes in surrogacy law stipulate that egg donors, even those used overseas, must be identified with full contact details in pre-approved arrangements entered into by Irish citizens, potentially a problem for the Northern Cypriot market. Sophia, the agency coordinator, explains how the donor pricing system works. The women in each folder fall into set price brackets, but she has to double-check the price of each individual woman. "If you can see one you would choose, I can ask," she types. I pick a Russian profile at random and ask how much her eggs would be. 4,500 euros, comes the answer. I ask if the price depends on the woman's nationality, and wait, curious for her reply as she types. "Yes, it is by nationality, as it depends on their tickets to come here for egg donation, etc. So the prices range." I stare at the text skeptically. I know that fertility clinics in Northern Cyprus often use student egg donors from the many local universities on the island, many of whom are not ethnically Turkish or Turkish Cypriot. These young women require no transport or accommodation costs and are paid a few €100 per egg retrieval. Starting on day 2 to 3 of their menstrual cycle, they inject themselves with hormones to stimulate their ovaries to produce many more eggs than usual. Every couple of days, the clinic monitors their progress with ultrasound scans and blood tests. Around 10 days later, a trigger shot of egg-maturing hormone is injected. The following day, the eggs are harvested under sedation or general anesthetic, as I discovered was the norm here, and the women go home. So why was I unconvinced by the rep's explanation for the Russian donor costing more? It made sense that harvesting fresh local eggs, especially on an island like Cyprus, is simpler for the clinics than buying and flying in frozen eggs from abroad, with all the complications of import and export permits and extra commissions to other agencies involved. There is also a greater risk of damaging frozen eggs during the thawing process, for which the clinic bears the cost. My suspicion that phenotypes are relevant to pricing was confirmed by a rival fertility agency in northern Cyprus, cheaper than its competitors. The coordinator, Oksana, speaks poor English and juggles my call with others. She confirms that the clinic uses only fresh egg donors and that they are usually local university students. More expensive options, from a folder she sends me entitled VIP donors, are flown in from Russia, and each profile comes with a password-protected video. Then, the truth bomb from Oksana. Girls with blonde hair and blue eyes more expensive, she tells me matter-of-factly. They have more model appearance, and these girls cost 600 euros. The others are 450. I nod sagely, as though this is perfectly normal information to receive. Some of the women I was looking at in the donor files appeared to have had so many cosmetic procedures done that it was hard to know what they or their genes really looked like, let alone whether they had the natural blonde hair I might be paying extra for. Even as a legitimate client, I would probably never meet these women and would have no way of identifying their eggs. At a clinic in Famagusta, the patient experience manager I met told me that the clinic only used anonymous donors, in line with local laws, and warned me against buying known donor eggs. Some of them, the non-anonymous donors, are a scam. They can easily show you a girl's picture, but maybe she is not available. They will give you eggs from a woman who looks similar. The global human egg market is notoriously difficult to track in terms of its individual players, but it operates on a huge scale. A crack team of Bloomberg reporters in 2024 calculated that a human egg is extracted roughly every 15 seconds somewhere in the world. Northern Cyprus is just one corner of an international network comprised of donors, clinics, and a huge number of recruiters and middlemen. Some of the agencies now operating in northern Cyprus moved from Ukraine soon after the outbreak of war in 2022, when cylinders of frozen human gametes were rushed out of the country like precious mini-refugees. I'm advised by several of the reps that I should go to their sister clinics in Georgia or Greece because I am married and heterosexual. The process is the same price or even cheaper there than in Cyprus, and the paperwork is easier. No sense paying more, Oksana tells me helpfully. Georgia does not permit IVF treatment to gay couples. Meanwhile, I discover that for Americans, the gay-friendly, cheap alternative countries are currently Mexico and Venezuela. Piece by piece, I'm putting together an idea of what the customer base looks like for fertility treatments in northern Cyprus. I notice a number of older, middle-aged women in the waiting rooms of the clinics I visit. This reflects the laws that allow treatment for women aged up to 55. I also notice that some of the egg donor profiles I have been sent have Mandarin translations alongside the English. In China, access to IVF is restricted to married heterosexual couples, and donated eggs can only come from women undergoing IVF themselves, so there are almost none available. I was interested to see that Chinese patients are in the market for Caucasian donors. While the global egg market grows, wealthy women are being encouraged to bank their own eggs to avoid having to buy donated ones in future. Commercial egg freezing started in 2014 in corporate America. Half a century after the contraceptive pill ushered in a sexual revolution, the April 2014 cover of Bloomberg Businessweek welcomed a new era of choice for women. Freeze your eggs, free your career. 2 years earlier, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine had officially stopped considering egg freezing an experimental medical procedure. private clinics in the US and abroad started urging women to plan for a future point at which they might be unable to naturally conceive. Advertising campaigns featured cute babies, or graphics showing eggs nestled in more than one basket, or golden egg hunt promotions. As ever, the golden goose was, and remains, the customer herself. 6 months after the Bloomberg cover, Apple and Facebook announced cash gifts of $20,000 to their female employees to cover egg freezing. The news split feminist opinion. Welcomed by many, it was also criticized as a form of cleverly marketed pressure on women to remain in work and postpone motherhood. The vast majority of eggs commercially frozen to date have not been used, which is part of the reason why success rates are hard to determine. Broadly speaking, frozen eggs have around an 18% chance of making it to a live birth, hence the need to preserve upwards of 10 for a decent chance of success. Many clinics do not make this clear. A BBC investigation in 2024 found that 42% of clinics in the UK could be breaching guidelines by failing to explain the chances of a successful pregnancy. I was beginning to get a picture of the lucrativeness of women's limited fertility window, the confusion of choice, cost, and risk that women face, often alone, while trying to anticipate their personal and biological futures. Egg freezing in the right context can legitimately be viewed as offering women optionality, as one management consultant described it to me. But I was increasingly troubled by the industry as a whole. Adverts for egg freezing play on a fear of childlessness, selling hope in parallel to the diet and cosmetics industries that have targeted women's insecurities since the dawn of advertising. I thought of the future beauty show, seamlessly merging with the future fertility show in Dublin. Same women, same messaging, same cash cow.
Cash Cow by Alev Scott was narrated by Hattie Morahan. It was abridged and produced by Jill Waters and the Waters Company for Radio 4. In the last